Good morning, my brothers and sisters. Welcome to episode number 152 in the book of Genesis. Today I'm going to title this kind of dramatically, Saving Jesus, which is what our story is ultimately going to be like. Now, we're just going to leave for a chapter the story, the great story of Joseph, this wonderful person. He's just gotten sold into slavery by the Midianite traders, and they're going to sell him to slavery into Egypt. Now, that's paused for another important and quite sinful brother. So one of the brothers is of Joseph. His name is Judah. Now, what would cause us to leave this great story of Joseph? Well, here it is. It's that the lineage of Christ is at risk. So in Matthew chapter 1, it talks about the lineage of Christ all the way from Abraham. Listen in, it says, the book of the genealogy of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham. Abraham was the father of Isaac, Isaac the father of Jacob, Jacob the father of Judah and his brothers. Those are the 11 guys that are trying to put Joseph to death and then sell him into slavery. And then here it is, verse 3. And Judah, the father of Perez and Zerah by Tamar. So Jesus' line is going to come through the knuckleheads we're going to read about the story in this story today. So main character here is going to be Judah, one of the main characters, and he is willing to murder his own brother, that's Joseph, and he almost, in today's story, he almost burns to death his own twin sons, kind of by accident. Like, oops, I burned my twin sons to death. So he's willing to sell Joseph into slavery at a bargain price. He's willing to marry a Canaanite woman. He's going to tolerate the unfaithfulness and the wickedness of two of his own sons. And then he's willing to burn his daughter-in-law to death for sexual indiscretions. He's very quick to see her immorality and slow to see his immorality. He's willing to have sex with a prostitute, and not only just sort of a generic prostitute, a cult prostitute, which is going to be, in my mind, probably the biggest part of his sin. But like King David, so here's the beautiful part of the story. Like King David, a man after God's own heart, Judah is going to repent. And he realizes, when confronted with the data of this story, he realized that he is the bad guy in the story. And he confesses in verse 28 of today's chapter is that she, Tamar, is more righteous than I, since I did not give her my son. And we'll talk about that. So Judah doesn't provide a husband and a child and a heritage, and as he thinks through his behavior, he changes his mind, which is so rare, obviously. Now, this is going to emphasize the importance of Judah's line through the twin sons that Tamar is going to have. And this is the line of Christ. So if Tamar, the mother, the pregnant mother who is threatened to be burned to death at the end of the story, the line of Christ would be lost. So Jesus' great, I don't know how many greats, grandfather would have been burned to death. So why is this story in the Bible? Why does it interrupt the great story of Joseph? Because the line of Christ is at risk. All right, so listen in here. This is chapter 38 of the book of Genesis, kind of a crazy story. It happened at the time that Judah, one of the 12 brothers, went down from his brothers and turned aside to a certain Adullamite whose name was Hira. There Judah saw the daughter of a certain Canaanite woman whose name was Shua. He took her and went into her. She conceived and bore a son. His name was She conceived again, and his name was Onan. She conceived another son. His name was Shelah. Judah was in Chezib when she bore him. And Judah took a wife for his firstborn, and her name was Tamar. But Judah's firstborn, was wicked in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord put him to death. Then Judah said to Onan, the second brother, "Go into your brother's wife and perform the duty of a brother-in-law to her, and raise up your offspring with your brother." But Onan knew that the offspring would not be his. So whenever he went into his brother's wife, he would waste the semen on the ground so as not to give offspring to his brother, who's dead now. And he did what was wicked in the sight of the Lord, and he put him to death also. So is gone and Onan's gone. All right, verse 11. Then Judah said to Tamar, his daughter-in-law, "Remain a widow in your father's house until Shelah, the third-born son, grows up, for he feared that he would die like his brothers. So Tamar went and remained in his father's house. So this is a principle called the Levirate marriage. It's described in Deuteronomy chapter 25. Moses delineates it for us. And it is set up for the provision and protection of a widow in this patriarchal society. So the point is, remarry within the family. The brother takes her as a wife to provide for her so she doesn't starve to death, and also to give her an inheritance through a son, which the son actually counts as the dead guy's son. So the dead husband's role is provided by his brother, and it gives sustenance and now a heritage with the children. Now the offspring count as fathered by the dead guy, so it kind of dilutes the inheritance of the other brother. So brother number one in the story is He's wicked in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord puts him to death. So life is ultimately in the hands of the Lord. He's the maker. He's the unmaker. The judgment is for the Lord. And here's a good teaching point, there are certain wickednesses that are punishable by death. So that should sober us all. Brother number two, Onan, performs the duty but wastes his semen on the ground. We know later that Tamar is fertile. And he does this specifically not to give his firstborn, a heritage. And the Lord looks at this and says it's wicked. So what's done in the bedroom can be wicked in the sight of the Lord. So sometimes we hear today, two consulting adults in the privacy of their home, anything goes. But sexual activity is created and condoned and here curtailed by the Lord, and maybe even condemned by the witness of the Lord. So Judah, the last two guys that sleep with Tamar, gets smote by the Lord. So he doesn't want to give his youngest, even when he grows up, to this guy. So three men do Tamar wrong, if you will. All right. So stick with me. We're halfway through the story, but we are getting to the point where Jesus, the line of Jesus, is going to be saved at the end of the story. So stick with me. You'll see you tomorrow.